Welcome to the Fangirl Feels podcast. We're two friends who basically read from our diaries while dishing about all the books, TV shows, and movies that we're obsessed with. My name's Tanya, and I'm here with my co-host.
Olivia. My name's Olivia.
And we're Fangirl Feels.
And we're the Fangirl Feels pod. Welcome, my friends, to season 2 of Fangirl Feels.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Thanks to everyone who's been a part of the ride. Hopefully we gain new followers who follow us the subsequent seasons. We are changing things up a little bit with a schedule ahead of time that you can see on our socials. And also we are uploading the episodes every Friday. It used to be Mondays, but now it'll be Fridays. We're trying to move it up a little bit so you know what to expect. We also changed our intro a little bit. OG Fangirl Feel fans to your team know the difference. But
they would notice it.
Yeah. They'll notice it. But yeah, today we have a very fun discussion. We are talking about we're talking about 3 prominent women in pop who are Taylor Swift, Beyoncé Knowles Carter, and Ariana Grande. All three of them had albums that dropped this year, and most recently is Taylor Swift with the Tortured Poets Department. Beyonce had her album drop earlier, which is Cowboy Carter, and then Ariana dropped Eternal Sunshine. And so we'll dissect these albums, talk about the history, discuss our thoughts on them, and we talk about some things that people might not have caught that we have learned from TikTok.
Yeah, I like how we don't claim it's us. It's just like from TikTok.
Not us.
Like, yes, it's not. It's TikTok.
I did a lot of research on TikTok.
On TikTok. I read an article. I saw TikTok.
I read one headline.
I read one headline. Now I'm an expert on this topic. Okay, so it's been a hot minute since we've talked to each other. So, I mean, we have talked to each other, obviously.
Between our podcast, we don't talk at all.
We just don't. We actually hate each other, except when we on our podcast, we pretend. So let's just catch up on things that we've been watching, reading, listening to. Oh, we'll chat about what we're listening to. Spoiler. But what have you been watching or reading, Tom?
Yes. It's funny because if you've been listening to us, we both kind of went through a period of not consuming a lot of things. And then for some reason, I think the warmer weather, and I've been going on more walks. So I've just been energized and loving life again. So I've been watching more things. So besides the music, we went and watched Dune in theaters, which was really good, second part of the series. Good acting all around. Go see it in theaters if you can. I don't know how long it's going to be in theaters. And also the winner of our fictional boyfriend March Madness, Timothée Chalamet, is in it, and as Wonka.
Fictional boyfriend. As Wonka, yeah, being whatever the character he is in Dune. What's his name in Dune?
Paul Atreides. He's kind of scary, so we didn't choose that for.
No, he is a little scary. I haven't seen Dune 2, but I am a known spoiler lover. I don't mind being spoiled, so I've seen spoilers, So I know exactly what happens. If anything with Zendaya in it, also I'm immediately yes, I will consume this
immediately. She does it with the outfits. That's the funnel. We get in with the outfits, and then we're like, okay, got to know about everything about this. I don't care about that tennis movie. I'll watch it because she's in it.
I don't either. I literally do not care 1 cent about it, but she's in it. And I'm like, she looks great. Tennis? Tennis?
Tennis? Tennis.
Tennis question mark.
Yeah, the outfits, man, get me in. So good on her and Law Roach.
They're amazing. They're so cool.
Dynamic duo. Amazing. Yeah. So then we binged Fallout, the series, in a couple days. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe. And I knew of the game because I am on Reddit, so there's subreddits that pop up about Fallout over the years. I've seen what it's about. I didn't even know there was a show happening, and then we watched it. And one of the main actresses was in she was in Yellow Jackets, a very good actress, and she's always in Creepy Things. One of my new favorite horror genre chicks. Love her. And then also Walton Goggins is in there, and he's literally he had an interview done where the person who led the interview was like, here's this guy who you might have recognized in that one show or movie. That's how we all know Walton Goggins. He's never the lead, and this is the first time he's the lead, and he crushes it as the ghoul. So check that out.
I do want to watch it. I've seen ads slash watched a few clips on TikTok as you do. Where it's like part one, and then you go down a rabbit hole. Yeah. So I do want to watch it. Sounds good.
They got you in with the interviews probably, and then you're deep into it.
Yeah, basically. So
Last thing I'll mention, not to take up too much time, but The Measure, it's a book that I'm reading for my book club. Not my book club. I'm in a book club with my friends. And it's a book about, I'm not going to give too much away, but in this book, people know how long they're going to live. And they know by somehow a piece of string is introduced to them, and it is correlated to how long their life is. And I liked the book. It's good, and it goes through like all the different, I guess, what's the word I'm trying to think of, all the different like outcomes from that, like all of the decisions people make based off that, knowing that knowledge, all the negative reactions, positive reactions. So really good book, but my one critique is they didn't spend enough time figuring out how this random piece of string showed up at their front door. That's all I would care about. And in fact, if you liked that book, you would really like, I think it's called An Unremarkable Story or Situation, Hank Green's book. Similar story, and they do focus on how the thing appeared. So, my 2 cents. But yeah, Olivia, what have you been into?
Um, let's see. So I've been in my PBS masterpiece era. I think I've discussed this before. Um, so I'll like tell the story of how I got here. So my sister's cat ran away like about a month ago now. She's back. So everything's fine. But there was a 2 week, she was gone for 2 weeks. And those were the worst 2 weeks of my life. Not to be dramatic. So I really love this cat. So I realized that like my comfort when I'm like really depressed, and like meanwhile like this cat's gone, I'm sad, and my parents are off gallivanting in London, or not London, they're just in Europe, right? So I'm like alone and depressed. So I found my comfort in PBS Masterpiece. That's the journey in which we went
That's
through.
so specific. PBS.
PBS Masterpiece. I don't know. It just was like a natural response. I don't know how else to explain it. So I'm right now watching Miss Scarlet and the Duke, which is this like Victorian murder mystery. So it's like this woman, Miss Scarlet, she's a female detective, which in the Victorian era is like very, you know, faux pas, very like what? A woman detective? Um, and her like guy best friend is like the inspector of Scotland Yard. But of course they have like a romance, like will they, won't they romance? Because of course they do. It's fun. It's a fun show. I'm on the last season. So I do recommend it actually, if that sounds interesting. Miss
Oh,
Scarlet and
cool.
Duke.
Of course, there's a romance. Why else would you watch? There has
It's
to be.
PBS masterpiece. Like, why else am I here? So very good, very clean, very PG, which I enjoy. And then I've been reading the book Lovely War. I've mentioned this a few times. I'm very slow. I don't dislike it, but it's not capturing me in its fullest. Because I'm the person that if I read a book, I will finish it in 2 minutes or it will drag on. So it's a little bit dragging on for me, but I will finish it. And it's about the Greek gods who are telling the story of like a love story, two love stories during World War One. So like Aphrodite is like sharing this story.
That's really cool. I don't know if I've heard of that. I was just looking through my books to see if I had it. I was actually thinking you were talking about This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I've been recommended, but
I
I'll have to check
had
out this
been.
one.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. No, this one's just called Lovely War, and it's like, yeah, love story. Two love stories that take place during World War One. It's very historically accurate. Apparently, I'm learning a lot about World War One, which I feel like is often neglected. I feel like we focus on World War Two and not World War One. So it's interesting to learn. I'll give it like a B so far. It is just a little slow at times.
I'll have to check. Is it long?
Yeah, it's like almost 500 pages.
Probably won't read it, but I'll.
Yeah. I respect the honesty. I do the same, right? Like I get it.
But I
It is
will
a lot.
tune into this podcast to hear your review.
Thank you. Yes. Oh, and I actually totally forgot I listened to an Encyclopedia Fairies, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies. This is a YA, or not YA, I guess it's just like a new adult romantasy novel that I just listened to while working. I had it on Libby and I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was like a cozy fantasy, is like how I would describe it. And
Ooh.
it's also been described as like Howl's Moving Castle, but I've never watched Howl's Moving Castle, so I cannot
What?
confirm or deny. Yeah, I know.
You
But the
have
romance,
it?
I have it. I know it seems very off-putting or like off-brand, but I haven't.
End of our podcast. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Shake hands. Just
Oh,
walk away.
there is a romance in that. You gotta check it out. And you finished that.
I did. I
Okay.
finished the first book. I listened to it, so it was easier to do that. And then I'm on the second book right now, listening to it.
Oh, series. Love it.
Yeah.
We love
Yeah.
series.
We do love series. I mean, like seriesies. No.
Mhm.
Se- We just love series. What's the plural of series?
It's- English is our second language. I don't know.
Does a series have a plural? What's the plural of series? You're on. That's not correct.
Yellow Jackets, bees. What are these philosophical questions
Bees?
today? I don't
Yellow jackets bees? I don't think scientifically they are.
know. I don't think so. Different genealogy. I don't know.
Genealogy. I'm pretty sure that's like human ancestry, right?
I
And
think so.
genealogy. It's wrong. Everything's
Don't
saying
come
wrong.
for science facts here.
No, it's fine. We're just girls.
Whew,
We're just
great segue.
hmm
It's a great segue into the topic of our conversation today, which is bum 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 global pop women.
women who've made, life worth living these last few months, honestly.
Yes. The past year. Yeah, it's
Last
been
year.
well, maybe 2 years now. Yeah, because Renaissance came out 2022.
There you
And
go.
so did Midnight's came out.
Yeah, end of
2 years ago.
2022. And then Era's tour was last year. Yeah.
So it's just been
Way
a
to
year
go.
of women for a while, and it's making us very happy. And Ariana
So
Grande's new
proud.
album, after like a hiatus since 2021, came out. And so today we want to spend time talking about all three of their albums. We're going to talk about the Tortured Poets Department. We want to talk about we want to talk about Cowboy Carter, and then we want to talk about the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Ariana Grande's album. So we're going to try and fit all three of those into this conversation. We've done some history, but I mean, we are both very much into these artists. Olivia is a Taylor Swiftie. I am part of the Beehive, and I'm also an Arianator. So we already have some knowledge just by being on TikTok. Let's get into it. Shall we talk about Taylor first?
We should let's do it. I mean, her album is the most recent, so maybe that makes sense to talk about it first. Freshest in our mind. It came out April 19th. Technically April 18th at night at midnight. I'm not one of those people that stayed up to listen to it, but I know plenty of people did. I just like cannot listen to that much music at midnight. But basically, I think a good summary. This is actually what Taylor wrote herself, that the Torture Poets Department, which she announced during the Grammys earlier this year in 2024, around February 2024, she describes it as an anthology of new works that reflect the events, opinions, and sentiments from a fleeting and fatalistic moment in time, one that was both sensational and sorrowful in equal measure. We take this to interpret it at around the year like 2022 to early 2023. So actually probably around the time she like released Midnights and was starting her Eras tour. And it's speculated to be about her 6-year relationship with Joe Alwyn, where they announced their breakup April 8th of 2023. So last year, early last year, which we do think that they had broken up before then, probably. It was just announced in April last year. And then supposedly, which was the surprise of, to everyone, was this album was actually more so about her situationship slash brief relationship with Maddie Healy, who is the lead singer of the 1975.
No.
Just no.
No
Done.
offense, girly. Slightly embarrassing, but all right. All right. Okay.
I mean, to each their own, right? To me, it's a little bit, I guess, like validating. Like, wow, she's just like us. She will also go for a really not cute guy. I don't know, just a
The like problematic bad boy. I get it.
yeah, yeah. Like I actually like the 1975. I didn't know anything about Matty Healy literally until any of this. I had no thoughts about him. But people were really against this relationship because they got together like maybe a month after she announced their breakup, like Joe Alwyn and hers breakup. And people were very against it. Like people wrote letters. I remember we talked about this on the podcast where people wrote like letters telling her to break up with him. It's like, what the actual F? Like, what are you doing? So what she says is like this period in her life is over now, the chapter closed and boarded up, and there's nothing to avenge, no scores to settle. But basically it's just which like how she finalizes this, like once we've spoken our saddest story, we can be free of it, and then all that's left behind is tortured poetry. Nathan Hubbard of every single album, this is a podcast I listened to, he had like a threads tweet, like thread, a threads thread, where he just kind of described this album as like a love vomit or an album of her vomiting from being lovesick, which I think is a very good way to describe this album. And I think important to understand when you like critique it. She even has like a whole prologue, which I'm not going to read this whole prologue. If you want to read it, go look it up. But there are some things that she says where she's like, as you might all unfortunately recall, I had been struck with a case of unrestricted humanity, which explains my plea here today of temporary insanity. Basically, like she's saying that this entire album is her like kind of having a moment. She's kind of like she's pleading temporary insanity and is like writing this all out on paper. It's like you see the pendulum swings, oh, the chaos it brings leads the caged beast to do the most curious things. So I think like reading the prologue is actually very important to understanding the album, because I think when you listen to the album, you're like, this girl's nuts. What's going on here? But she's actually like quite literally admitting that when she's like when she introduces the album that like this is a literally someone just having a moment and writing it all out and enjoy. That's how to
I
describe it.
agree too. Because I saw critiques online, like take people taking certain lyrics out of context, and you do need the context and reading that prologue to understand like this isn't current Taylor, this is a moment in time in her life, and she created art as almost like a diary to process
Yes.
it. And our diaries are not perfect, and you should include all your thoughts in them. And she just happened to publish it to the world. But I think that's important to know.
Yeah. I think people were like expecting this like beautiful bow of an album, which she's always typically given people, right? Like Midnight's was, whether or not you thought Midnight's was a good album is one thing, but it was like a succinct album. Like all her albums have been kind of succinct stories. This was like kind of a mess. And that's like okay. I think that was partially the point. And I think like if you get it, you get it. And then if you don't, you don't. You know? It's like her lowest rated album to date. It says 77 Metacritic score. But I don't think it's there was this like article by NPR that says that the torture post department represents Swift's newfound freedom demonstrated by her lack of concern about whether these songs speak to and for anyone but herself. And I think that's a good way to describe it. Like I don't think she wrote these songs for anyone but herself. And it's like either you enjoy them or not, which is actually very rare for Taylor Swift because she's normally very obsessed, I think, with like commercial and like awards and accolades. And I think this might be the first album where she's like, I'm not writing album of the year. That's not the point. And like, that's okay. Good for her.
There's freedom in that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love when artists can get to that place, to be honest, because it's not for everyone, and that's okay. You don't need like worldwide success, so you just need to release your art.
Yeah. And people will appreciate it. And clearly they have. Literally, despite this, it obviously is a commercial success and it broke all streamed album records, first day like streams in Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music. It had 300 million streams in a single day, which for comparison, 300 million streams. For comparison, Cowboy Carter had 300 million streams in its first week. And she got
Dang,
that in a day.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Like it's actually quite nuts. I think I read somewhere that she's almost at 1 billion streams now, which is insane. Like she's on a different planet. So she does have the freedom to kind of just write what she wants, you know?
Yeah. She's reaching like global pop star, or she already is at global pop star phenomenon levels where, yeah, she could do anything.
Yeah.
People would still eat it up.
People still whether and like you can critique it all you want. Like people don't think this is her best album. That's fine. You don't have to, but it's gonna be successful. So what were some of your favorite songs? What did you think of the album? Since I'm like a bought-in Swiftie, what are your thoughts on this album?
So again, her music is not my go-to. I'm more of like an R&B soul type of person. And so like when and pop too. So like when like there's a Venn diagram and she does songs, she creates songs that are similar to genres that I typically like. I also like folk music, so those I tend to gravitate towards too. Those tend to be my favorites. So like my favorite from the album is Fortnite from which is the first one, and it's with Post Malone, who I'm starting to like and finding attractive, which is insane. I never found Post Malone attractive until he started. She and Beyonce had him as like a leading man in Levi's, in Cowboy Carter, and Fortnite. So that's my number one. I like Florida because Florence Welch is in it from Florence and the Machine, which is one of my favorite bands. Just incredible artists on that song. Um, Down Bad. The Boy Only Breaks His Fave Toy. I'll be honest, I had to go through the album this morning. I hadn't listened to the whole thing all the way through until this morning, so I kind of like skimmed through some. But of the ones I did listen to, again, it's Down Bad. My Boy Only Breaks His Fave Toy. I Look in People's Windows and The Bolter. And I do agree that some of these are like slow burns, where like a lyric will stick with you or like a melody will stick with you and you come back to it. And so like that kind of happened with I think like Down Bad. Like people were playing it in TikToks and I just kept like hearing it in my head. And so those would be my favorites. I know people claim it's like long, but 31 it is long, but it's not like the longest album people have put out. And I do have to say like if anyone's a Mac DeMarco fan, he released an album last year called One Wayne G. It has 199 songs and they're not labeled. They're all labeled by a date.
Whoa.
So he is super like anti-industry and the album's good, but I have obviously haven't listened to all of it, but I think people who critique how long it is are just comparing it to other pop albums that typically are shorter. So
Yeah. And I think again, like miss the point of the album to some extent. Like I think you can make the critique that it's long. And I think the critique of it all kind of sounding the same, I think is fair. There are elements of this, there are some songs I think she could have cut. And I think her and Jack Antonoff love them. But also sometimes they just have a formula that they just like boop, boop, deep, boop, boop. And like the song comes out. And you're like, I've heard this before. I think that's fair. But yeah, to be like, yeah, I think if there's 100 song album out there, then I think we're gonna be okay
right,
with
yeah.
31 songs. I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, it did sound similar, but I agree also with like what you've told me before too. Is just like let it simmer and let it sit with you, and you will remember the songs as you let it sit in your brain. But yeah,
Yeah,
what did you think of the album?
I agree. Yeah, I am a bought in Swiftie, but I like something I've learned with Taylor Swift songs is yeah, you have to sometimes let them sit with you. You will listen to something on a first pass and it like songs won't stick, or you'll actually like dislike a song and then you'll come back to it and you're like, wait, I do actually like this. I think like that was me with I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, which is basically her singing about how she's like completely depressed while doing the Eras tour. And it's a really funny song. Like it's very silly. Like one of the lines is like, I'm so depressed I act like it's my birthday every day. And Taylor has these like really ridiculous lyrics sometimes. Like she's kind of known for that, for just having these like really out of pocket lyrics. So when I'm first hearing it, I'm like, what the F is this, Taylor? I don't like it. And then you listen to it again and then another time and you're like, I see what you're doing. And I actually like it. But I don't think that's the best on the album. My favorite is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. That's my favorite on the album. And I think this is for the spooky girls. This album is for the spooky girls. Like I'm not even a spooky girl, but this song is for the spooky girls. It's just a very good song, very empowering. She's unhinged in it, and I appreciate it very much.
I missed this entirely. I can't even tell you what that song sounds like. It's for the spooky girl. Hello.
It's for the spooky girls. I know. I'm like, this is a very you song. I mean, like the entire song is basically about how like she's kind of tired about the expectations that people put on her. And so she's almost just like rebelling to the extreme. Like I have like some of my favorite lines. It's like, I was tame, I was gentle, till the circus life made me mean. Don't you worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Who's afraid of little old me? Well, you should be, because you lured me and you hurt me and you taught me and you caged me and called me crazy. I am what I am because you trained me. I just think it's really good. And they're like the verse before this, it was like, where she describes herself like basically on the gallows. She's like, I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street. Basically, she's like purposely scaring people. She's like the imagery is really interesting because she's just like, I'm gonna be a spooky witch and I'm gonna curse you all. And who's afraid of little old me? Well, you should be.
I love that energy, carrying that with me all year. Thank you, Taylor.
Yes, it's a really good song. It's probably my favorite on the album. And I also like Down Bad. I like Florida. Well, Florence is amazing, just incredible. That song is also kind of unhinged, but I appreciate it.
Right. We're not fans of Florida in general, but the
No,
song.
she references Florida a lot in this album. Like, and I'm like, what is Taylor's obsession with Florida? Like, what happened in Florida? I want to understand. Something occurred in Florida to her.
Do we
Florida.
not know?
No, I think like there's like speculation. I've heard like, oh, because she's from Nashville, Florida is often like it's like a popular vacation spot. So she sees it as just this like, I don't know. Like she's taking like the cultural aspect of it of this area where people like go to drop their lives. And also like nothing good happens in Florida to some extent, you know. So that's why the whole song is like I'm gonna like basically put all the dead bodies of the men that have hurt me in Florida. It's basically the song, you know.
Oh,
Like, perfect. It's fine. There's a lot of songs I like on this album. My boy only likes his favorite toys. I can fix him. No, really, I can. So Long London. Great song. The line, I'm pissed off. You let me give you all that youth for free. Ouch. Poor
yeah.
girl. I mean, she spent 6 years with that man.
Wasted time. Not wasted, but I see what she means. Yes. All
Yeah.
that youth. Yes.
I pissed off. I gave you all that youth for free. Like, I get you, girl. I get it. And yeah, I look in people's windows and the prophecy. Those are like on my initial list. But yeah, it will change, I think, as it goes. But I'd say this is like, it's not my favorite Taylor Swift album, but it's probably like top, as of right now, maybe like top five.
I like that. The unhinged like ness of it is kind of nice. It is,
It
to be
is.
honest. Did she mention that she wanted kids with Joe? I think I saw a TikTok about that.
It sounds like it. It sounds like they did want kids. Well, there's a joke on the song But Daddy I Love Him, which is we think is targeted at like her fans, especially the fans that like uh were against her dating Matty Healy. And basically the point of the song is that her reputation is hers to tarnish and she can do whatever she wants with it. So people speculate like daddy is the fans. But there's a line in a song that is I'm gonna have his babies. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces. Which is like being, stupid, like breaking the
She's like
fourth
breaking
wall.
the fourth wall. Oh, Jinx.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Jinx.
so cute.
Yeah, she is. She's breaking the fourth wall with her fans, but I think she's just like playing around with these ideas that people have had of her.
What a weird way. Like I can't imagine, and this might be a good segue to continue to the other artists, like being a large pop star at this level, like you can hear and see the critiques of your art versus if you're at a smaller scale, you don't necessarily always hear it. Social media has allowed
Yeah.
us to kind of see behind the curtains. But I can't imagine that like now she's taking the public's critiques and criticisms and perceptions and using that in her art, and it's a part of her art now. And so like it's interesting, it's strange, we live in a weird world.
It's very, it breaks the fourth wall. Yeah. And then she like throws it back out. So I saw an interesting critique where it's like she's one of the few artists that can kind of bash her fans to some extent and like put it back out to them and then not be upset. Because I mean, this is also a portion of the fandom that wrote her, this stupid letter about her dating Matty Healy. But people have obviously felt like entitled to her lovemaking decisions, right? Like who she's made and who she's been with. And she makes it clear that it hurts her, So
Yeah.
it is interesting. It's a weird album.
Yeah.
This is an album where it's like I wouldn't recommend it to like first time Swifties, but if you like want to get weird, get in this album. Get weird.
She's like, I know I'm weird, let's do this.
Yeah, because it's a weird one. It's a weird one.
So on to the next album that we'll be talking about, which came all three of these albums, the artists approached them from different areas of their life. and through different processes. So this album, Beyonce's been working on for a while, and she's been very strategic behind the scenes. This was the definition of that meme that's like, I'm moving in silence. I'm silently moving. I'm making big moves in silence. Because she had been working on what essentially is going to be three, maybe three plus acts of albums, acts slash albums. So the first one was Renaissance. Now we have Cowboy Carter. And so people are wondering what genre she's going to move into for the third one because she essentially broke into these albums that all have roots within Black culture. And so this was a very strategic, methodical album. And so I want to start with I saw a TikTok that I sent to Olivia that I thought was a great way to summarize the way that these two pop women, Taylor Swift and Beyonce, approach their art and how the public perceives it. Beyonce makes the communal feel personal, and Taylor makes the personal feel communal. And I love that because Beyonce has a way of making the Black experience. She summarizes it into her songs, but it still feels relatable to Black women, Black culture. And Taylor makes her personal life stories, dating Joe Alwyn, dating Maddie Healy, and beyond dating men, like her general life, like a pop star, feel like we're all just girls. And I love that they do that. And not to compare the two, they really shouldn't be. Their art is so different, and they're friends. So the Beehive and the Swifties should be friends too. But it's just interesting that to compare their experiences. They come from different origins. So yeah, well, I'll give a little history of the backstory of Cowboy Carter. So like I mentioned, Renaissance came out 2022, I believe, did a whole tour, didn't release the visuals, which again, for this one, she just released images. So we're all waiting for the visuals, Beyonce. So um, Cowboy Carter is a concept album, the second of the planned trilogy, like I mentioned. And it's a journey through a reinvention of Americana, spotlighting the overlooked contributions of Black pioneers to musical history. And so people are like, it's a country album. Why is she doing country? And I think that's a misinterpretation. And that person clearly did not listen to the album because the album only has a couple country songs. She otherwise mixes other types of genres into it. So she's kind of moving into, I should say, she started in country. Her origins are in country. She's from Houston. She and sang at rodeos when she was younger. So she has roots in it, but she is adding more country specific songs to her discographies. I would say that. And so she has different genres of not only country but pop, hip hop, trap, psychedelic funk, blues, rock, etc. Opera. She sings opera in Italian, and it's gorgeous. Weeping
I
as I
heard that.
listen to it.
I loved it. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite songs on the album. I was like, is this opera? Amazing.
Crying, yes. She also did a really cool thing where she incorporated a lot of OG country icons. So she included Dolly Parton, Linda Martell, and Willie Nelson. And if you listen to the album, and I believe that the album should be listened to without skipping. So listen to the beginning to the end because she was strategic in how she listed them out. And so as you listen to it, Willie Nelson's the disc jockey playing the songs on a radio. And that's how it kind of progresses. And so the genesis of Cowboy Carter, again, she tends to sing about the Black experience and makes it relatable to the public. So the way that this album started was that she performed at the CMA's Country Music Award show in 2016 with the Dixie Chicks. And there was a lot of negativity from people who didn't want her there because they're like, oh, she's just a pop artist / people who were genuinely racist. And so the Country Music Association ended up deleting promotional posts about her performance, which was seen by many as them succumbing to pressures to do that. And so that rightfully so pissed off a lot of people. It shouldn't have been done. And so she decided to create this album, Cowboy Carter, to kind of claim country because that's her roots. And she had all rights to be there in the first place. So yes. So if you listen to the album, she did a lot of history, and there's all these little gems that the Beehive is picking apart. There's so many TikToks. We don't have enough time to go through all the different things she found out. Again, this is a pretty long album as well. I think it's 27 songs. So each one, there's little nuggets you'll hear that have references to American history. And so primarily it's called Cowboy Carter. And you might think oh, her last name's Carter, Beyonce knows Carter. But what it's actually in reference to is that there is a country family called the Carters, primarily Mabel Carter, and she came up with the Carter scratch that she popularized, which was actually taken from a black country artist called Leslie Riddle. None of this has been confirmed, I think, by Beyoncé, but many people on TikTok have said that that's probably the origin of the name. So it's again reclaiming and giving the genre back to black communities. So that is like powerful right at the beginning, even with that knowledge. So
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. I just assumed it was because her last name is Carter.
right.
Yeah, well, that's super interesting.
The alliteration too is kind of nice.
Yeah, I like it. That is cool. Good for I have heard, I've seen some of these TikToks about like how in depth a lot of this goes. And it is really cool. Like it's a very, I learned a lot just from like the brief TikToks I've seen of like how much of country music is actually rooted in Black history. That's something I never knew. And I'm not a big country music fan. So I honestly just never really had any knowledge of any of it. You just kind of assume country white, like South white, but that's actually seems like not true at all. So good for her, honestly, to share, to like educate people while putting out good music, you know. She
Making
shouldn't
this.
have to do that. Like black people shouldn't have to do that, but also good for her.
Yeah. She took it upon herself to kind of like do it at that global level, which is really
Yeah.
interesting. And likewise, I didn't know that either because like I knew that like blues and rock and roll stemmed from black communities. And then to hear that country was actually from black communities was like, oh my gosh. Okay, of course they should have that light shown upon them. So critical reception. Cowboy Carter was met with universal critical acclaim. Lots of people were saying this is like one of her best albums, and I agree. I think it's one of her most cohesive, well thought out albums. Because I personally am not a country fan, there are country songs on this that like I don't come back to. Renaissance is one of my favorite albums by her. Renaissance and probably Lemonade are my favorites of hers. And so this album, like I notice I'm not coming back to as frequently, although some of the songs are just recency bias. I'm going back to for that reason. They're just like popular at the time. But yeah, people are saying it's one of her best albums. It got a 92 out of 100 on the Metacritic scale, which I had never heard of until we started going on Wikipedia for this. But yeah, and people are saying that this is the album that she purposefully created for critical acclaim. So I think she's gunning for the Grammys uh, album of the year for next year.
Yeah, I think this is an album she wrote to get as many people on board as possible with her. I think this is like a good album that's like shows people like what she's capable of. Not that people ever doubted. I mean, some people did doubt like what she's capable of. And I like admittedly am not the biggest like R&B fan. So like it's not that I haven't liked Beyonce's music previously, but I just recognize like I'm not her target audience. I just continue like to say that. I'm like, I'm not her target audience, but that doesn't mean that I didn't like that her music was bad. I think this is something that she wrote for a larger audience, right? Like expanding her target audience, I think. And even just like the amount of genres that she's included in it too. And it's like just a more cohesive story. Like, yeah, I think this is her coming for album of the year. I think Jay-Z said that, in his Grammy speech. And I think she will get it. I think she should. If she doesn't, that will be people will riot.
Right. It's like, what does an artist have to do to get that? Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about our favorites. So it changes as I've listened to it. Like I think for you too, as you're listening to Taylor's album. So like just takes time to settle in. But like I think Yaya is my most favorite. It's the most commercial one. It Some people are comparing Yaya to John Petit's songs. And it's for good reason. It's just really well done. Spaghetti. I really like Spaghetti. Levi's jeans again. Shout out to Post Malone. He should be in everything now.
He's having a great year. Great
Great
year.
year. Him and
Yeah.
Charlie Puth. What? Why
Yeah.
that came out of
And
nowhere?
Charlie Puth apparently still hasn't said anything. And they're like, Charlie, you need to say something.
We should talk about Charlie Puth at some point because I think like while he is talented, apparently has perfect pitch. I think he makes terrible music.
Really? I don't dislike his songs, but that's fair. Like he has some bangers, but I get it.
But anyways, yeah, Most Wanted and Tyrant. What are your favorites?
I really like Daughter, which I'm pretty sure Daughter's a song that she has opera in it. I'm pretty sure that's that one. It's like later on in the song. Protector, which has like a snippet of her daughter in it, which is super cute. That song's like about how she's like a protector for her children, which I thought was very cute. Two Most Wanted, her and Miley Cyrus. Their voices are amazing. And also like good for Miley to be on a Beyonce album. Like I feel like that's a big deal. I still see her as like a Disney Channel person, which is sad. Like she's not a Disney Channel person. She's moved past from that. But there's just an element of like to be on a Beyonce album, like you kind of you make it to some extent.
Made it.
Yeah. Like it legitimizes her a lot. And then I also like yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's like a good dance one. It's fun.
Overall, yeah, fantastic album that we'll keep coming back to.
Yeah, it's a great album. I agree. I would give it, I don't know, I'm not gonna rate it. I just thought it was good. I was like gonna rate it, like, no, I'm not gonna rate it. It was good.
We'll move on to the next album by Ariana Grande, Eternal Sunshine. It dropped. When did it drop? March, I think.
I think March 8th. I think it was International Women's Day.
That's right, which is
Yeah.
funny, weird. I don't know. I don't know how I
Yeah,
feel
I don't
about
know why. I don't know why.
that. Okay, anyways, but so I am an Arianator, so I will lead the discussion on this. I probably more of an Arianator than I am a part of the Beehive. Love all the artists, but I just have been following her. I feel like we grew up with Ariana versus Beyonce is a little bit older. And so like Ariana when she was like she's literally a year younger than I am, and she's your age. And so, like, as we were growing up, I felt like we are following her journey as we're reaching career milestones. So, like, it kind of lined up, like, with her getting new, into new relationships while we're exploring adulthood. And so, I just tended to gravitate towards her and her story more. This album, she wrote this album after her divorce with Dalton Gomez, which is kind of a surprise to everyone. I think everyone found out when she went to, was it Wimbledon? And people noticed she didn't have her wedding ring on. Everyone's like, gasp, divorce. And so then all that drama with like who she's dating now, Ethan Slater. We won't dive into that. We're just talking about the art. But she wrote this album in a relatively quick time during the SAG-AFTRA and writer strikes because she's in Wicked, the movie that's coming out this year. Part one is, and so the production had halted during those strikes. So she had some time, a couple months, to write this album, which is rare for her. She ended up writing a lot of it herself, which is rare for her. Typically, in her previous album, she gets other writers to come on. Which shout out to Victoria Monet, wrote a lot of hits of hers, and now she's having her heyday, which she deserves. I love her. She also created this with Max Martin, who's created hundreds of hits. Like I think he's worked with like NSYNC, all the original pop star girlies too,
Taylor
like
Swift
Taylor
also.
Swift. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Taylor,
Yeah.
Britney. So he
Yeah.
knows his stuff. Yeah, so this is a concept album, meaning we don't know if certain songs are about her real relationship or about the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And so for context, in that movie, if you haven't seen it, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet go through, they were dating in the movie, and then they go through with the procedure that wipes away their memories in their minds to forget each other and the relationship. But what you end up finding out, and this is a spoiler, pause or fast forward 15 seconds if you don't want to hear how this movie ends. The procedure doesn't erase feelings. And so it's a really beautiful metaphor for like love prevails. And so like even though their memories are gone of their relationship, they end up like seeing each other in real life again when they forget who each other are and fall back in love together. And so Ariana's album, she's even mentioned that like her relationships went different ways, but that thought process she went through of like, I wish I could erase past relationships to move on. And so critical reception, again, Metacritic, shout out to you, whoever you are, people. But out of a score of 100 ratings, it received 84, but it indicated universal acclaim. I don't know what that means. But people have said that this is her most honest and inventive music of her career. I agree that it is her most honest. It was like when Thank You Next was it was immediately a hit because it was her most honest work up to that date. Like it was reflective of what she was going through versus like previous albums were just like pop hits. They weren't as personal. So I feel like when these artists make these personal albums, you can tell. It just feels genuine.
Yeah. I do think this is like an honest album. I like this album more than I expected to be honest. when I was listening through it. I was like, I think I went in expecting not a lot. And then I was like, wait, no, I like this album. What am I thinking? This is good.
I had honestly initial thought. I just was like, how could this time period in your life lead to this type of music? I don't know. I think a lot of her fans too were also just like weary of like what will happen because also this album is kind of her commentary on the public right now. Her public persona at the moment, she's having bad press because of her relationship with Ethan Slater. So it's like this is also like a response to that. So we're all just like, what can you say?
I feel like it actually helped her public perception a little bit. I've seen people like comment on how, especially after Yes and came out too, and a lot of people really were unhappy with that song. And then the rest of the album came out, and I think some of the criticism died down. Like people were a little bit more sympathetic towards her after some of these songs, which is understandable. I mean, we like to make people villains. And like, yes, you can be the villain, but that doesn't mean you don't have your own emotions and, complicated feelings too. I think like we want black and white and things are most of the time gray, as you learn. Things are gray. And I think in this album people think that she's suggesting that her husband cheated on her. Like, there are things like that. So I think it just kind of you just don't speak on what you don't know.
It's true, and I agree. I think the album helped overall. It just was like it's just like sonically like a really good album. Like it's just in like lyrics wise, and so it kind of helped with her PR. I agree, and
It did.
I agree that like it was she was purposeful in making it a concept album, so we can't like decipher what was real and what was fake, and it's just all too up to interpretation. But I think ultimately it's like for all these artists that we talked about, like people are too focused on their personal lives, and I get it. I
Yeah,
totally get it because it's like we only hear one side of the story. We don't really get to hear what happened, but you are telling us kind of a story. And so I get why that people get so attached. But yeah, people get so attached to a point where it's like problematic, which we should
tell me
avoid,
about it.
everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
So what were your favorites from this album?
I really like Supernatural. The Boy Is Mine. We Can't Be Friends. That one I think is like a classic. Like I would say classic. We Can't Be Friends is like, and the music video like made me cry. I was like, oh, it's sad. She's a good actress. And then True Story, which in True Story she talks about how like she'll play the villain, like if it just like makes things easier, which I think is interesting. Yeah, those are my favorites, I think. What about you?
I love that because the boys, I'm sure you've heard, Boy Is Mine is like her riff on the song that became popular on TikTok. I'm sure you heard about all that happened.
No, actually. No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. So, over the past couple years, her music that her producers had edited from like 2018, 2019 and onwards, her producers, they used a program that was up and they uploaded all these songs to a cloud that were hacked. And so a lot of her like unreleased songs came out. And on TikTok, one song in particular blew up. Oh, do you remember what it was? One second. So the backstory, yes. So a lot of her songs were released, so hacked into from the cloud of whatever program they were using since like 2018 and before that, maybe and onwards. And so there was a song that became popular on popular on TikTok called "Fantasize," which everyone loved, but it was like not a real song. She had created it for like a fake like improv group, and it's like not her style at all. But it's like super R&B 90s, and people loved it. And so it's stolen. And so she created The Boy Is Mine so that people can like legally consume it.
Whoa, I did not know that. That's so interesting. I mean, something I like about Ariana Grande's sound is the kind of like 90s sound to it. And I know I said that I didn't like R&B, which maybe that's not true. I do like the 90s aspect of it. Even just I was listening to it again this morning. And I'm like, this reminds me of growing up in like the early 2000s. It's like she makes that kind of music and I enjoy it because I was that girl listening to those songs. So I'm glad she exists for that reason. We need that music still.
Yes, 90s and early 2000s R&B just hit different. It's
Yeah,
just its own genre of its own time period. Loved it.
agreed. I agree. It was great.
But yeah, I so for me, Supernatural also great song. Oh my goodness. And then Troye Sivan came on it too. Love him. We Can't Be Friends, where it's very reminiscent of Robin's Dancing on My Own, which I love. So I immediate banger. Also cried. Jesus. That was such a sad video. Eternal Sunshine, Imperfect for You, and I Wish I Hated You. So all those songs have kind of stuck because this has been around for a while. So I went back to it, the album this morning, just to see like which were my favorites, and these have stuck as my
Yeah,
favorites from then.
agreed. Yeah, it's been out for like more than a month now. And I appreciate the like length of this album. I appreciate it's short and sweet. Like I do agree. Like Beyonce's album took me a little long to listen to it all. And Taylor's did too. Like they take a long time. And you like can't physically consume that much music. You know, your brain cannot process that much music. You will get to it, but just not in a short amount of time. So I do like that hers was just like, here is a little package, a little bow. Take, enjoy.
Yeah, it is kind of nice to the different. It'd be so hard to get to dissect all these if it was like hers was like 42.
It would be like songs that you'd have to like get through. It would be crazy. Yeah, it'd be nuts.
Insane.
Or 90 songs. I think each of them are like 30. It'd be like 90 songs. Is that
Yeah.
math? 30 times 3? Yeah, that's math. That's math. What's where's the math on that?
We don't do science or math on this
No.
podcast. We just want everyone to know. It's not in our
Just
branding.
yes, it's not. We make it very clear. Math is not our. It's not in our wheelhouse. I really can't do it. I was like
Despite being
16.
despite being immigrant kids, everyone, yeah.
Don't believe everything you hear. We failed our parents.
Hmm.
We're in the arts. We're doing a podcast, so that will tell you a lot.
Tells you. Which, by the way, we reached 50 episodes. This is our 51st episode.
Nice. Congrats to us.
Congrats. High five,
Congrats.
friend.
High five. Good job. We did it. I think that's pretty good, actually. We're very consistent. I appreciate that.
I think so. It's been helping. I think we've gotten better. We've just like some days, everyone, we wake up and we create what we're talking about, but we did switch things up this time around. We're in season 2, everyone, by the way, where we released what we're going to be talking about ahead of time, which
Yes.
helps us to kind of have an idea of what we talk about. But yeah, sometimes we do wake up and we're like,
What are we
what are
talking about today? That was season 1 us. Season 2 us comes prepared.
Mhm.
We try. So thank you for listening and sticking around with us. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Fangirl Feels. Like we said, we have our schedule of episodes up until the end of or middle of June. That will be like our first half of episodes, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break and then come back and we'll release that schedule afterwards. So the link will be below if you want to see our episodes. We have a author interview next week with Haley Whiteley. So get excited for that. And then we'll also are going to be doing a Legendborn read along. We're doing our first book read along. Just see how it goes. So if you want to read Legendborn or have read Legendborn, this is a very popular YA book series. We are starting that read along on May 10th. And we're taking it in parts. So part 1 will come out May 10th, and then part 2 will be 7 days after that. What is that? May 17th? Math also? Is that math? I mean,
I think so.
10 plus 7. I
Yes.
can do that much math. We can do that much math. And then we're taking a break in between parts 1 and 2 to talk about Bridgerton. So get excited for that, Bridgerton part 1. And then we'll do parts 3 and 4 afterwards. And then we'll talk about Bridgerton part 2. So that's our schedule of episodes coming up. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, follow, like, subscribe, tell your friends. It's going to be exciting. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fangirl Feels Pod. We also post on YouTube at Fangirl Feels Pod, the visuals of this if you want to see our beautiful faces. And yeah, stay tuned to next week. We're now releasing on Fridays instead of Mondays, so changing that up a little bit. And we'll be back in your feed next Friday.
You can read Ink and Ore, Haley Whiteley's book. To keep up with our discussion, you can read it on Kindle Unlimited. The link is in our bio on Instagram.
Nice. Yeah, that's who we'll be interviewing next week. So if you want to check her out, Ink and Ore. Okay. But until then. Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
Right. All right. What's that show about bees? Oh my gosh.
About bees.
Do you know what I'm talking about? We're gonna edit that out. Sorry. Once I know.
About bees? Bridgerton?
Beyonce?